There are moments when the world feels like it's shaking on purpose, not in a poetic way, not as a metaphor meant to make pain easier to swallow, but as a real and immediate experience in the body. Your chest tightens when you read the news, your jaw clenches without asking your permission, your mind starts scanning for what's next, and your head starts bargaining with reality. Maybe it's exaggerated, maybe it's not as bad as it looks, maybe someone will step in, maybe it will all calm down tomorrow. And then it doesn't. When people are killed in public conflict, especially when the circumstances feel unjust or unanswered, the nervous system does what it was built to do. It goes on alert. It prepares to protect. It searches for meaning. It searches for control. It searches for a story that will make the danger feel containable. Right now, there are reports and public outrage around fatal shootings involving federal immigration agents in Minneapolis, including the death of Alex Preddy, with conflicting official accounts and video evidence fueling calls for investigation and accountability. That's not an abstract headline. That's the kind of event that pierces a community's sense of safety and sets off a wider wave of fear, anger, and grief far beyond any one city. So when you say, how can we look at this in a mindful way? You're not asking a cute spiritual question. You're asking how to stay human when the world gives you reasons to harden. You're asking how to keep your heart open without becoming naive. You're asking how to be compassionate without becoming passive. You're asking how to keep your mind clear when propaganda, panic, and pain all want to hijack your attention. You're asking how to hold the truth of suffering without letting suffering become your religion. Mindfulness does not ask you to pretend the fire isn't hot. It teaches you how to stand near the fire without becoming only flames. It teaches you how to name what is happening inside you: fear, rage, sorrow, disgust, dread, without turning those feelings into your entire identity. Jon Kabat-Zinn says in Wherever You Go, There You Are that mindfulness is about paying attention on purpose, in the present moment without judgment. In a time like this, that can sound almost too simple to realize how rare it is to meet reality without either collapsing or becoming cruel. And if it's true that something like a spiritual awakening is unfolding in the wider culture, it will not look like incense and perfect lighting. It will look like everything that has been buried rising to the surface. It will look like old violence becoming visible. It will look like systems showing their teeth. It will look like people discovering what they actually believe when convenience is removed. It will look like the dirt coming up, because new growth doesn't happen in clean rooms. It happens in soil, and soil is made from what is broken down. The hard truth is that awakening, whether personal or collective, often begins as disturbance. The comfortable story breaks. The numbness stops working. The denial becomes too expensive to maintain. The heart insists on honesty, and honesty at first can feel like despair because you're finally seeing clearly. This is not an attempt to offer clarity that does not abandon compassion, compassion that does not abandon clarity, not to spin pain into a pretty meaning, but to give you a way to stand inside the storm without losing your soul. A lot of people misunderstand spirituality as a mood. They imagine it as calm music in the background of life, or a permanent softness in the face, or an always peaceful feeling that never gets interrupted. That idea falls apart the moment the world becomes openly cruel, because then peace starts to look like avoidance and love starts to look like denial. But the older spiritual traditions, real ones, the kind built by humans who lived through brutality, occupation, injustice, famine, exile, do not treat awareness as decoration. They treat awareness as survival. They teach that the first act of freedom is to see what is true without lying to yourself. In Buddhist language, this begins with acknowledging suffering as real, not as a mistake. The word often translated as suffering can also mean instability, unsatisfactoriness, the ache of a world that does not stay still. It includes obvious pain, but it also includes the background anxiety of living under conditions you cannot control. The point is not pessimism, the point is honesty. Because if you cannot admit what is happening, you cannot respond wisely. In a moment of political turmoil, social unrest, and public violence, it's easy to swing between two forms of numbness. One is dissociation, where you shut down emotionally because you cannot bear the intensity. The other is obsession, where you consume information compulsively until your nervous system is fried, and you mistake that state for being informed. Both are forms of being pulled out of your center. Mindfulness is not a demand to stop caring. It's a practice of staying in relationship with reality. Thich Nhat Hanh says in Peace is Every Step that peace is not something you hope to achieve later. It's something you practice in each moment through awareness, breathing, and compassionate presence. In times like these, that teaching becomes less like a greeting card phrase and more like a discipline, because without it, you can be manipulated by every surge of outrage and every wave of fear. To see clearly, you have to slow the process down inside your own body. This is not spiritual fluff, it's biology. When you feel threatened, your body shifts into a protective state. Your attention narrows. Your thinking becomes more black and white. Your imagination becomes more catastrophic. You become more likely to dehumanize an enemy and more likely to treat disagreement as danger. That does not mean your concerns aren't real. It means your nervous system is doing its job, and you need to work with it rather than pretending you can think your way out of it while your body's in panic. Bessel van der Kolk says in The Body Keeps the Score that trauma is not only what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happened. And even if you were not physically present at a violent event, repeated exposure to threatening imagery and helplessness can shape your internal world. Your body starts acting like the future is unsafe. Your mind starts acting like nothing will ever get better. That's not moral failure, that's a human system under strain. So the first mindful step is not to explain the world. The first mindful step is to tell the truth about what is happening in you right now. Not with drama, not with performance, but with simple honesty. I'm afraid. I am furious. I am heartbroken. I feel powerless. I feel disgusted. I feel tired. I feel numb. I feel like I can't keep watching this. When you name what is here, you stop being possessed by it. You don't erase it, you meet it. Pema Chodron says in When Things Fall Apart that the most transformative moments are often the ones that break your heart open, because they force you to stop using your old defenses. The world right now is breaking a lot of hearts open. The question is, what do we do with that opening? Do we fill it with hatred? Do we fill it with despair? Or do we let it become a doorway into a deeper kind of courage? Clarity is not cold. Clarity is clean. It's the difference between reacting and responding. It's the difference between being used by fear and using fear as information. It's the difference between I must destroy and I must protect what is human. Clarity lets you ask, what is true? What is assumed? What is rumor? What is verified? What is still unknown? In a charged environment, that kind of mental discipline is itself a moral act. This is especially important when language gets extreme, when people use words like murder, cold blood, execution, terror, war. Those words might reflect the emotional reality of what it feels like to witness injustice, but they also carry legal meanings and factual claims. A mindful approach does not require you to soften your moral concern. It requires you to speak with accuracy so your integrity stays intact. You can say truthfully that there are reported fatal shootings, disputed accounts, and widespread concern about unjustified force and lack of accountability. You can say that there's grief and rage. You can say that the pattern feels terrifying. And you can demand investigation and reform without letting your own language become a mirror of the very recklessness you oppose. The mind that is awake is not the mind that is always calm. It is the mind that is honest, steady, and hard to manipulate. Imagine a seedling that actually sprouts. The first thing that actually appears at the ground level is the dirt. And this isn't just poetic, it's accurate. When something new tries to live, what has been compacted has to loosen. When roots push down, old layers shift. When a field is planted, the soil is turned. And when the soil is turned, things that were hidden come into the light. That is what collective turmoil often is, the turning of soil. For a long time, many people could afford not to look. Not because they were evil, but because the system was designed to let some people live comfortably while others paid the cost. Comfort is not just a lifestyle, it's a form of invisibility. When you are not the target, you can mistake quiet for peace. You can mistake order for justice. You can mistake normal for good. Then something happens that makes the hidden visible. A video, a death, a policy, a raid, a public confrontation, a child crying, a crowd screaming, a body on the ground. And suddenly the story of "we are basically fine" becomes impossible to maintain. If a spiritual awakening is happening, it is not that humans are suddenly becoming angels. It is that humans are being forced to reckon with what they have tolerated. The shadow of a society is not only its worst actions, it is also what it normalizes, excuses, and ignores. Carl Jung's language about the shadow is often used in pop spirituality, but the core idea remains useful. What we refuse to face does not disappear. It operates unconsciously. When that unconscious material rises, it often looks ugly. It often looks like overreaction. It often looks like people clinging to identity, power, and control. It often looks like backlash, escalation, denial, and propaganda. That is the dirt coming up. But dirt coming up is not proof that growth is impossible. It can be proof that growth is pressuring the system. There is a temptation, especially in spiritual circles, to turn this into a comforting storyline. Everything is happening for a reason. Be careful with that. When you say "for a reason" too quickly, you can accidentally disrespect real suffering. A person who's been killed does not become meaningful because you can frame it as part of an awakening. Their life mattered before any meaning you attached. Their death is not a teaching tool. It's a tragedy that demands accountability. A wiser spiritual frame is humbler. It does not claim to know why everything happens. It asks, what becomes possible when the truth is exposed? It asks, what are we being invited to stop denying? It asks, what kind of people we will become in response. Joanna Macy says in Act of Hope that despair is not a sign you're broken. It's a sign you're awake to the world. She also emphasizes that what we do with that awareness matters. You can let despair turn into paralysis, or you can let it become a source of commitment. In this sense, turmoil can function like a threshold. It pushes people to decide whether values are real or just preferences. If you look at history, you'll see this pattern repeatedly. Moments of upheaval are often the moments when hidden structures are exposed. And exposure creates conflict, because once something is seen, it cannot be unseen. People who benefited from invisibility will fight to restore it. People who suffered under invisibility will fight to keep the truth in the light. That struggle is not a sign that awakening has failed. It can be the labor pains of a society trying to decide what it is. Still, awakening is not automatic. Turmoil does not guarantee transformation. Turmoil can also produce cruelty, authoritarianism, scapegoating, and collective nervous breakdown. The same heat that softens wax can harden clay. That is why mindfulness matters. It helps you become the kind of person who does not use the crisis to justify dehumanization. Howard Thurman says in Jesus and the Disinherited that religion can become either a tool of oppression or a source of inner freedom for those under pressure. His point is not limited to Christianity. Any spiritual path can be used as an escape, or it can be used as a way to hold dignity when the world tries to strip it away. The spiritual question is not, how do I feel peaceful while everything burns? The spiritual question is, how do I stay anchored in human dignity while everything tries to pull me into hatred? The dirt coming up includes our own dirt too. It includes the part of us that wants revenge, the part of us that wants simple enemies, the part of us that would like to be righteous instead of responsible, the part of us that would rather destroy than grieve. Awakening is not only seeing the system's shadow, it is seeing your own shadow in the mirror and refusing to feed it. Compassion is not a mood. Compassion is a refusal to let your pain make you cruel. A lot of spiritual harm has been done by confusing compassion with passivity. People hear "be compassionate" and assume it means be quiet, or don't judge, or don't get involved, or just send love. But real compassion is not limp. Real compassion is strong enough to face conflict without losing its humanity. In Buddhist practice, loving kindness does not mean you approve of everything. It means you refuse to reduce any being to an object. You refuse to turn humans into monsters in your mind, because you understand that Dehumanization is the psychological doorway to brutality. You also understand that accountability is not the opposite of compassion. Accountability can be an expression of compassion, but it protects the vulnerable and interrupts harm. Desmond Tutu says in No Future Without Forgiveness that forgiveness is not pretending nothing happened. It is not refusing justice. It is not telling the wounded to hurry up and be peaceful. It's a commitment to end the cycle where harm creates more harm. That kind of forgiveness is demanding. It requires truth-telling. It requires repair. It requires consequences. It requires a future that does not repeat the same violence. In a time of turmoil, you may need to practice compassion in layers. One layer is compassion for those harmed, those frightened, those targeted, those grieving. That compassion is straightforward. It says, your life matters, your safety matters, your dignity matters, your pain matters. Another layer is compassion for yourself, because carrying out constant outrage can burn you out. Burnout does not help the oppressed. Burnout does not help your family. Burnout does not help your community. It simply hands your attention over to the people and systems you oppose. You do not owe anyone your nervous system as collateral. Another layer, harder but important, is compassion that recognizes how fear works in human beings, including the people you believe are doing harm. This is not excusing, this is understanding. Fear makes people cruel. Fear makes people obey. Fear makes people justify things they would not justify in calmer times. Fear makes people accept propaganda. Fear makes people hungry for an enemy. If you understand that, you can fight the system more intelligently, because you're not just fighting actions, you're also fighting the emotional fuel that sustains those actions. Viktor Frankl says in Man's Search for Meaning that between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose. That line gets quoted so often it can lose its force, but at a moment like this, it becomes painfully practical. When you see violence or hear about it, your stimulus is intense. Your body responds instantly, but there's still a space, even a small one, where you choose what kind of person you'll be next. Here's one way to hold that space in accessible, simple terms. First, feel your feet. Not as a performance, just notice the contact with the floor. Second, let your exhale get a little longer than your inhale. That signals safety to the body. Third, name what you feel with one honest sentence. Fourth, ask a grounded question. What is mine to do today that protects life and dignity? Not what is mine to rage about for 6 more hours? Not what is mine to doom scroll until I am shaking, but what is mine to do? Sometimes what is yours to do is to show up. Sometimes it is to donate. Sometimes it's to call your representatives. Sometimes it's to support a local organization providing legal help, food, shelter, transportation, or medical care. Sometimes it's to talk someone down from despair. Sometimes it's to take a break so you can keep going tomorrow. Mindfulness is not a substitute for action. It's a way to choose action that is clean rather than reactive. And it's also a way to practice boundaries. Boundaries are spiritual. They're how love becomes safe. Bell Hooks says in All About Love that love is not simply a feeling. It's an action rooted in care, commitment, responsibility, respect, and trust. Respect includes refusing to normalize harm. Responsibility includes refusing to lie to yourself. Commitment includes staying engaged even when you are tired. Trust includes telling the truth. A mindful person is not someone who never gets angry. A mindful person is someone who does not let anger become their only language. Anger can point to what you value. It can energize action, but if anger becomes your home, it will eventually eat your tenderness, and tenderness is part of what makes your action worth taking. That is the core paradox of spiritual awakening and social turmoil. The more you see, the more it hurts, and the more it matters that you keep your heart intact. It is easy to become right. It is harder to become free. If the world is moving through something like a collective awakening, you should expect turbulence. Not because the universe wants drama, but because human systems resist change. When people's identities and power are threatened, they do not always respond with wisdom. They often respond with escalation. You may see more polarization because fear likes simple stories. You may see more disinformation because control depends on confusion. You may see more performative outrage because attention has become a currency. You may see more exhaustion because constant crisis is a form of psychological pressure. And you may see more courage, too, because crisis also reveals people's capacity to protect one another. In Minnesota, for example, reporting has emphasized not only the conflict and legal disputes between state and federal authority, but also the ways communities organize, document, protest, and demand accountability, even under risk. That is part of what upheaval reveals, the system's force and the people's will. The mindful question is not, will there be turmoil? The mindful question is, what kind of turmoil will I feed? Because each person feeds something. You feed fear or you feed steadiness. You feed dehumanization or you feed dignity. You feed despair or you feed commitment. Even if your actions feel small, your nervous system is not small. Your nervous system is contagious. The way you speak, the way you post, the way you treat your neighbor, the way you hold your anger. These things ripple outward. This is why so many traditions place enormous emphasis on inner discipline during outer chaos, not as self-improvement vanity, but as protection against becoming a pawn. When you are unregulated, you can be pushed into extremes. When you're steady, you can be strategic. There's also a deeper spiritual point here, one that needs careful language. Some people hear awakening and imagine a guaranteed happy ending. That is not how awakenings happen. Awakening is not a promise that everything will be fine. It's an invitation to stop living in a trance. A trance is when you're asleep inside your own life. A trance is when you accept cruelty as normal. A trance is when you confuse comfort with goodness. A trance is when you let outrage replace intimacy. A trance is when you forget that real people are being affected by policies and power. Awakening is simply the end of trance. When trance ends, the world can look worse at first because you're no longer editing reality to protect your comfort. You are seeing, and seeing is painful. But seeing is also the only doorway to true change. You cannot heal what you refuse to name. So if you want a mindful way to hold these truths, here's one phrase you can return to, not as a mantra, but as a compass. I will not abandon my humanity. That means you will grieve without becoming cynical. You will act without becoming hateful. You will demand accountability without becoming addicted to vengeance. You will stay informed without destroying your nervous system. You will rest without calling it apathy. You will love people without pretending the system is fine. And you will remember that compassion is not the same as collapse. Compassion is not lying down. Compassion is standing up without becoming what you hate. Martin Luther King Jr. says in Letter from Birmingham Jail that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That is not only a political statement, it's a spiritual statement about interconnection. When a society tolerates hate or harm toward one group, it deforms the whole society. It deforms the moral imagination. It trains people to look away. It teaches the heart to shrink. Spiritual awakening at its best is the reversal of that shrinking. It's the heart learning to stay open without becoming fragile. It's the mind learning to stay clear without becoming cold. It's the body learning to stay present without becoming overwhelmed. In the end, the question is not whether the world is awakening. The question is whether you will. And awakening here does not mean having cosmic visions. It means telling the truth, staying human, and choosing the next right act again and again without giving your soul away. Love, peace, and release.